In this demo, I'm going to be speaking about NWAR6221, Part 2. I'm going to be starting from Part 2, Activity 2. This is the second demo discussing your Part 2. Activity 2, install and configure Active Directory on both servers using the domain name VTG. Remember, you need to customize that to put your own name. So I'm going to call mine subainvtg.com, with the Pretoria server being the parent root domain server and the Johannesburg server being the second writable server in the domain. No child domains are to be used, but replication of Active Directory will take place between Pretoria and Johannesburg. How would I do this now? Let's just read more instructions, otherwise we might do the wrong thing. Important for successful configuration, routing must be configured correctly from activity 1 and test connectivity between the two servers using the ping command. Additionally, ensure that DNS parameters are correctly set to the successful installation of Active Directory. In other words, they are saying when you are installing your second domain controller, so you install your first domain controller, and the first one should be Pretoria. Before you install Johannesburg domain controller, you first need to check that these two server computers can talk to each other by pinging each other. Otherwise, you can't install the second domain controller because it needs to communicate with the first one. That's what they are saying here. Configure Active Directory sites and services as shown below, but using subnets based on your IP address plan, and test replication between VTG PTA and VTG JHP. You have created subnets. Your address plan has been given to you, which you created in the first study. So here they're giving us an example. Active Directory sites and services, intersite transports. They've got IP, then they've created subnets here. Can you see? And they've got the two servers that are Joburg and Pretoria servers. So what are they going to be giving us marks for here? You need to have installed and configured PTA server, JHP server, Active Directory sites are correctly configured, subnets are correctly configured, replication is working between VTG PTA and JHP. If I go into my case study now they also say earlier in the assignment that some of this material might not be covered in your RC Learn or your textbook. So additional research is recommended, and you can also watch some additional YouTube videos as well. There's lots of YouTube videos that shows you how to configure these tasks. Going into my server now, I need to install Active Directory for vtg.com. There's my server that I've opened up. I'm going to go to Tools, Add Remove Roles, or Add Roles and Features. From Server Manager, going to go Next. This is a role-based feature on the current server. The server, you should have changed the name of the server as well. So they told us what the servers must be called. So let me quickly go and change my server name. So it's got the funny name that's there by default. I can go and change that quickly. And they tell you like Subain, VTG, this is PTA. So I'm going to say PTA and then DC01. So just by looking at the name, I've got an idea that this is my Pretoria domain controller. So I'm going to close that and it's going to restart. So it's important when we're going through these that we actually go and perform each of the steps that's required and have a good understanding of the case study, because it's more difficult to make changes later on if we have made mistakes earlier on. Which doesn't mean you can't undo things. You can undo things, or you can just delete and restart again. That's part of the learning process. So there's no such thing as doing it perfectly the first time round. It's perfectly okay to make mistakes. Learn to make mistakes. That's how we learn. Learn to break it and then fix it. That's how you learn. I've changed the name. I'm going to go ahead and install Active Directory from my server manager. I'm going to select ADDS, Active Directory Domain Services, add features, next, 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 install. You should all be familiar with this process already. Active Directory installation. It's still busy, I can see. So this is entirely about Active Directory. Activity 3 now says, configure DHCP solution based on the IP address plan designed in activity part 1, task 1. Hint, implement multiple scopes based on the PoE IP address plan. Note that you need to only activate the server subnet and the rest can remain inactive. The server subnet. Note that all scopes need not be activated except the server scopes that your VTG PTA DC01 and VTG JHB DC01 are configured on. You can create a super scope for both VTG PTA DC01 and VTG JHB DC01 using resident subnets on each server. And then they give us marks for this. Subnets are successfully configured. DHCP subnets are configured on Joburg and Pretoria. The superscopes are configured, so it's important to configure superscopes. And then DHCP implementation mirrors IP address plan from task 1. So the IP address plan that you did in activity 1 needs to be replicated. Let's go back and see, it's still busy. Then activity 4, install and configure a Windows 10 client to join the VTG domain on Pretoria site using DHCP issued from the server subnet. In other words, the client is going to say obtain IP address automatically. It's going to connect to the DHCP server, get an IP address, and then you're going to join the client to the domain. The client, so this should be client name here, VTG PTA client computer 01. That's the Windows 10 computer. So there's three virtual computers that they say we need to install. 2 servers and 1 client. The servers have got Server 2016 installed. The client has got Windows 10 installed. So going back here, okay, post deployment. promote this server to a domain controller, add a domain controller to an existing domain. No, we're adding the new forest. The new forest is Subain VTG. Yours is going to be called yournamevtg.com. I need to give a password. Go next. It's going to create a delegation. Okay, so it's going to create that for me. Next. It will fill in the NetBIOS name. I'll go next. I'll accept these folders. Go next. And prerequisites check pass successfully. Remember, you needed to have completed the first part. In the first part, we assigned IP addresses to the different network cards. This does not proceed if there's no IP address. You need a static IP address that was typed in. So just remember to do part one before you are doing this that I'm showing you now. So you can see there I've got two network adapters. One should be connected on a so the first one I'm going to say is 135.10.12.13. And I'll make it the same. 5. What do you mean I'm about to be signed out? Dot 10. Dot. Oh, because when you install Active Directory, it needs to reboot. So that's why it's rebooting. So else it's rebooting. So part two, as we can see, is the practical implementation of what you've decided to do in part one. In part one, you drew up a plan, network diagrams. Now you're physically implementing that plan using virtual computers. Let's just open up. So you would have, in part one, you've created these tables when you answered the question. And they said you must create all of these different scopes here. So mobile device scope, artificial intelligence scope, robotics scope, software development scope, operations scope, ICTD management, and then servers scope. Remember, you needed to add servers. I see some people did not add the servers when they answered the question. So if you did not, go and correct it so that you don't get this part wrong. So in addition to that, you add servers as well. I've got a client here, so let me just start this one. So here I can go and change the computer name. So currently, what is this thing called? System information. It's called desktop with this number. So I can go and change that. And they said I must change. This is VTGP. So I can say Subain VTG PTA CL01 for client. Say okay. So there's my server. So there's my domain that I'm logging onto now after installing Active Directory. And this one is my client. That I've just changed the computer name. So as I can see now, if I go into Tools, Active Directory Users and Computers, there's Active Directory Users and Computers. I can see that my domain has been installed. So there's my domain that has been installed, subainvtg.com. Going back to the question, it says for the first one, I need to install, this is DHCP, Active Directory Forest Root Domain, VTG. So there's the first 3 marks there. You do the same thing now for Johannesburg. Then you get another 3 marks. Active Directory sites is configured correctly. They told me how to configure the sites here. So I go into Active Directory sites and services. Again, I go back to my server manager. This is my client. I'm going to minimize my client. So I go back into my server manager. Go to Tools and open up Active Directory sites and services. And from sites and services, then I will go ahead and create according to the case study. So they speak about subnets that I need to have. They speak about different sites that I need to have. I can create a new site here by right-clicking and saying new site. So the second site is VTG JHB. So one site is VTG JHB. And this one, I can just rename this one to Subain VTG. And this is PTA. So I've got a PTA site. And then I've got a JHB site. For this one, the server is already installed. The next one, you'll need to install the server. But I'm just going to create a server for myself. So this one is Subain VTG JHB DC01. So I can see now at both of these sites, I've got my servers that are installed. Then they said, according to your case study, create the subnets. So you need to say new subnet. And then what is the subnet? You'll give an example. Example here they've given. So 192.168.10.0/24. That's an example of a subnet, but you will create the subnets according to the site contains the new subnet. Select the site that contains the new subnet. So I need to select where is the subnet. It is in Pretoria. And I'll say OK. So there's my first subnet that's created here. Similarly, I'll create the other subnets that's required according to the case study. And once I've done this, it says Active Directory sites configured correctly. There's the sites, which we've done that. That's 3 marks. Subnets, I've done 1. You need to continue. And replication working between VTG, PTA, and JHP. So you need to configure replication, or you need to show that the server has been configured for replication. We're going to leave that to you to complete. So this is the second demo, and then we'll do an additional demo that's going to continue with activity 3. You have any questions?